Welcome to Black Men Speak. I'm your co-host, J.R. Stewart,
And good evening, everyone. This is your co-host, Tommy Duncan. Welcome.
and today we have the pleasure of discussing Jesse Owens, another recommendation by Tommy Duncan. But before we get started on our discussion, I'd like to encourage everyone to help us out by subscribing to our channel. Click on the like and share the video on your Facebook or other social media, and also spread the word. So word of mouth is a good advertisement, and it's good for us also. So we're trying to grow this year. So, Tom, you have anything you want to say before we get started?
No, man, I'm ready to go. We're good.
Okay. So of course, let's start off with the with our norm. I'm always interested as to how we pick the people that we pick. So, what made you think about Jesse Owens for this week?
Well, last week, of course, we talked about Marcus Garvey and the impact that he made on American history and the influence that he's had on our community throughout the 20th century. And I was thinking about someone who had a broad impact globally, kind of similar to what Marcus Garvey had. Marcus was very specific in terms of his impact. And, I thought of a few people, and Jesse Owens came to mind because he had such a global impact. He, at that point in time, and probably until his death, was probably the most celebrated American and one of the most celebrated American athletes, by far, of the 20th century. And it wasn't just an impact that he had on our community in particular, but on all of America and globally. He was, during that first half of the 20th century, probably the most well-known personality globally. And there are few people that you could go any place in the world and whose name you would know. And Jesse Owens was one of those people.
So that's quite an accomplishment, considering we had just come out of a world war and we were entering into a second world war when he was making his impact. Now, just imagine if he didn't have to compete with the warring nature of Germany at the time that he was winning Olympic gold. So being the first Olympian to win 4 gold medals, and in the style that he did it quite convincingly, you're right. He did set the stage for other global athletes to come behind him, and he was a great ambassador. You didn't hear about him being arrested, beating on his wife, kicking his children around, not paying his taxes, going to jail, anything like that. So the impact that he had on the world stage as far as recognition, the accomplishments that he achieved during the Olympics were all great things. And like I said, I think it set the stage on how to conduct yourself when you reach the level of let's say, a Michael Jackson or LeBron James or Kobe or some other person who's known worldwide. I think Jesse sort of set the template for how to conduct yourself, how to carry how to conduct yourself in life, and how to be a good ambassador for the position that you are given on the world stage.
And what you also have to remember, Jimmy, during this period of time, you're talking about the mid 1930s.
Yes.
There was no basketball for blacks in America. There was no football for blacks in America. There was no baseball for blacks in America. So when you look at track and the Olympics, this is one of the few areas where someone who had, talent at a level of his could compete on the world stage because that opportunity wasn't available.
True.
We brought up, other athletes and our entertainers, and sports is a form of entertainment, but during that period of time, you had very few opportunities for Africans in America to be able to show their prowess and their excellence on the world stage like that. And he was in a very fortunate position, fortunate and unfortunate position during that period of time to show not just the talent of his individual self, but the talent within our community on a world stage and being one of the most famous personalities in the world.
Well, and plus, in addition to that, Tom, I mean, he did a great deal for helping the statesmanship for America. When you're talking about a time when the German propaganda machine was at its height, putting out propaganda about the superiority of the white German, and for him to come in to their backyard and upstage them, especially in track and field, the way he did, was something. So I remember reading how, on day one, Hitler would go down and congratulate the winners until Jesse started winning his gold, and he got so sick that he went home. He didn't even stay for the rest of the Olympics.
Yep.
So that's just how sick the Hitler was over what was happening to his superior athletes at the time. That he put out there that these were the best in the world, and they were the best in the world, the smartest, the fastest, the strongest, and they couldn't be beat. And here this black man came in without having to, say anything. I mean, he let his actions talk for him, and those actions were louder than anything that our State Department could have put out to counter the propaganda of the German machine.
You're right. And that's one of the reasons. That is the primary reason, Jimmy, when I thought of someone who had as cataclysmic an impact on society, on the essence of being excellent as a human being at a specific talent. You have to understand that when Jesse Jackson was coming up, when he was young, I mean, for what it's worth, blacks were free, but they weren't free. His family had to move from Alabama to the north, per se, to the Midwest, in order to find opportunities for work. You had to remember that, it was still separate but equal. And so he didn't have a country behind him, per se, even though he was an excellent athlete, even in America. But you are right in terms of him literally destroying within a couple of days the propaganda that was advocating at that time, one of the most strongly advocated messages of white supremacy globally.
So you have Jack Johnson, who dominates the boxing world by being the first black heavyweight champion, and he beats the previous champion quite handily. I mean, I'm not going to say easily, but it was quite obvious that he put a beating on his opponent. So that opened the door to destroying the white myth of white superiority. And I think, by the time Jesse Owens comes along, there are probably those here in America who, in their self-interest, wanted to believe that maybe the Germans were right, that white people were superior. And I'm pretty sure that it was quite a shock to them also, not just to the Germans, but also to some folks here in America who were buying into the German hype, especially those who had a German connection back to the motherland, who may be German Americans, for him to have to destroy that. So I can only imagine the psyche and what was going on with white people at this time, with seeing this black man just totally dismantle all the white athletes that he's competing against in the Olympics.
Yeah, for what it's worth, Jesse Owens carried the United States in America. Obviously, there are dozens of different dozens of areas where you come into play in the Olympic Games. But when you talk about domination, when you talk about one personality that dominated for an entire country, that was Jesse Owens. And that was a Jesse Owens who wasn't even accepted back home in the United States.
Well, like I said, I'm pretty sure there were quite a few Americans who did not, were probably interested in seeing us win, but certainly wasn't interested in seeing a black man dominate the Olympics the way he did. especially when the Germans were putting out so much propaganda about their superiority. I can only imagine for German Americans here in America how proud they were to claim some connection back to Germany, so they can sort of pigtail on the belief of superiority. And it wasn't just that the white German was superior to the black person. The white German was superior to all the white people. That they considered themselves to be the purest of the white people, although you could probably debate that maybe the Russians were probably the purest, but that's another story. So like I said, Tom, I can only imagine the psyche of what was going on in the heads of people to see this and to have to accept that he accomplished what he accomplished, in the height of all of this belief that somehow blacks were not just intellectually inferior, but also physically inferior.
No, I'd agree. I would agree with you, 110% on that one. So, when it comes right down to it, I would agree with you in terms of him being able to single-handedly destroy the message of propaganda of the superiority of the Aryan nation globally, and white supremacy in particular.
Yes. So to some degree, now it's not as severe, but to some degree, when you look at, let's take a sport like basketball, and you get a Larry Bird that comes along, or you get a what's the kid here in Dallas now, Duca?
Yeah, Lonchick.
So
I cannot pronounce his name very clearly, but
I can't either,
man.
Don't
chick, and don't get me to try to pronounce his name.
So when you get talents like that come along every now and then, who are able to succeed in a sport that's dominated by black athletes, it becomes a little bit of a shock to black people to see this. But we're not shocked to the point that we need therapy or to take drugs in order to deal with it. We can still appreciate the play of a Larry Bird. We can still appreciate the play of someone like Luka, and just enjoy the game, and just realize that it is a little bit of an oddity to see a white athlete in today's age who are able to play at a dominant level in a league that's dominated by black athletes. But like I said, I can only imagine what some people were going through back then when all they ever saw was white athletes dominate, win medals, go to the Olympics, and then, like I said, all of a sudden you see this black man pop up on the stage, and you're witnessing history being made. Not only did he dominate the sport and dominate the Olympics at the time, but to make history doing it. Not just being one of the first blacks to make it to the Olympics, but also the first person, period, to win 4 gold medals in the Olympics. Now, he probably could have done a lot more in lifetime, I'm sure, if he wanted to. But like I said, we're going through a Second World War at the time that he was performing and accomplishing what he accomplished. But like I said, but then the other thing I wanted to talk about was after the Olympics were over, it seemed like he settled down to a quiet life. Like I said, you don't read about him getting in trouble with the IRS. You don't hear about him, being unfaithful, or rumors of him being unfaithful. It looks like he stayed married to the same wife up until he died. With someone like that who did not seem like he was seeking the limelight after the Olympics, he went, he did what he did, he accomplished what he accomplished. He came back home, he settled into a nice, comfortable life, but like I said, he became a really good role model for how you deal with fame and overcome, the negativity that he had to face at that time.
Yeah, Jimmy, but unfortunately, when he did come back home, he did have to struggle because, with him being the most celebrated athlete, of that time, when he came back home, he did not have, it was hard for him to find a job. Otherwise, he ended up having to take some odd jobs when he came back to the United States. He didn't, of course, get endorsements like, other athletes did. Whether it was working at gas stations or, man, even having to race horses. And I know you've probably seen this, Jimmy, where he had to even race
I saw
horses in
footage
order
of that.
to make cash to feed his family. So even though he became later in his life kind of an advocate for the Olympics and kind of a goodwill ambassador, during that period of time, in his 20s and 30s and going into his 40s, he struggled because he was still in the midst of a country whose status quo was white supremacy, classism in America that really didn't didn't provide the opportunity even for someone who carried a country like himself.
Now, I've seen the videos of him racing horses. I just thought those were stunts. I didn't know he was really doing that to make a living. And
Yeah,
in fact, I read about. I thought he had a comfortable life because he became like a sports commissioner for Ohio, and he did some other goodwill work for the country, and that was pretty much as far as employment after the Olympics. That's pretty much all I can find. So some of the odd jobs that you speak of and him struggling, I guess that is not in all the history books where it should be. So
of
um,
course it isn't. Of course it isn't, Jimmy. Who wrote those history books?
well, you can only read what's on the shelf. So
And what made it worse, Jimmy, is that he acknowledged himself when he got back home. There was this consternation about Adolf Hitler not acknowledging him, after he had won, those gold medals. But man, to rub salt into the wound, when he came back to the United States, even the president of the United States didn't invite him, or
they bring him
shake
to the
his
White
hand or
House.
invite him to the White House.
Who was it at the time? Roosevelt or Roosevelt?
Yep, it was Roosevelt, FDR.
The beloved FDR.
Yep.
I guess he didn't have time.
Yeah, they said he was too busy
Yeah, right.
for the most celebrated athlete in the world at the time.
Yeah, that is something else, Tom. That just goes to show, man, that you don't always get out of life what you deserve, but you do get out of life what you make it. So I am glad to see that despite all of that, he was able to overcome and, like I said, stay married to the same woman, have a
Yep.
wonderful family, and get on with his life, man. So it's just unfortunate, which is why it is good for us to discuss and to celebrate Jesse Owens, put things in their proper perspective, because if you don't, and this is where it is important, Tom, for the work that we do, and we need to encourage others to do it also. If you don't, and you leave it up to other people to tell your story, there are some key things that may be missing, like the part that you just shared with myself and everyone who's watching or will watch this show, what his life was like after he came back. Because if you just go to the history books or Wikipedia or things that are written about Jesse Owens, you would certainly get the feeling that he had a very comfortable life after he came back. No one
No,
wants
yeah,
to talk about
he
the
did
bad
not.
thing.
He did not, man. One of the things that he had said that he had kind of gotten some backlash from the black community because they were offended, saying that look, you just won 4 gold medals in the Olympics, not too long ago, and you out here racing against horses. That's below your dignity. It's like, look, I got 4 gold medals, but I can't eat them. I got to feed my family.
You gotta feed your family, man. That's correct. You do what you
Yes,
have to do, man. Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. You do what you
So
have to
it
do.
was tough, and I mean, on top of that, when he actually ran track at Ohio State,
The Ohio State University.
and during that point in time, even though Ohio State today is considered definitely to be one of the most diverse, large universities,
Yes.
in the country, at that point in time, as great as he was, Jimmy, he was not offered a scholarship, and so even though he won 4 medals, I believe in 1935 and 1936 in the NCAA, he had to work to put himself through school.
He had to take a job, which I think when I saw his autobiography, And when you watch I watched two movies about Jesse Owens, and they both pretty much culminated in at the Olympics.
Right.
I wish someone would actually do a story of his life after the Olympics, just for the archives, to preserve that so it doesn't get lost. But yes, I heard he had to work his way through school, and his coach was in the movie they say his coach was somewhat instrumental in helping him find a job where he wouldn't have to work too much. He could make pretty good money, and I believe he was married while he was in school.
Yeah, he got married pretty early. But to think about this, Jimmy, you're the best athlete on the track team, and you can't get a scholarship.
They had to save it for the white students, Tom. I'm pretty sure that it was okay for you to be here if you could pay your way. And you're
the best athlete by far on the team.
Well, not just the best on the team, the best in the country,
the best in the world,
and eventually proved to be the best in the world. And you still couldn't get a scholarship to The Ohio State University. I'm pretty sure, looking back on that, they have probably tried to find ways to honor Jesse Owens and try to make it up. But I hope this is something that, once again, Tom, we need to have discussions in our homes with our children about these things. Our lineage speaks to us being a oral people. There's a reason why rappers are so successful, because of African history was always passed down verbally. It was never written down, and you would have the village historian who could keep up with all the families in the village and go back hundreds of years, if not thousands of years, of telling their family history. Families retain their history, by passing it down verbally, orally, from one generation to the next, so you would always remember who you came from. You were always the son of somebody, the grandson of somebody. You could always trace your lineage back several generations, hundreds of years, thousands of years. So this is important for us to get back to reclaiming that process of passing our history down from us to our children. What would happen if you were not here today to speak, to fill in some of the gaps that my knowledge did not allow for in the discussion? Then we would basically be put into the historical archives forever, because these videos are going to be on YouTube, and 1,000 years from now, people will still be able to go back and watch these videos if they were interested in anything that had to be said. So we need to make sure that the proper message and the proper history is being retained and passed on from generation to generation. And once again, we cannot depend on the schools, we cannot depend on the books or the movies to tell that story. If we're not investing in that story and doing it, Tom, we do ourselves injustice.
It's somewhat of a double-edged sword. You're right. These people were called griots, G-R-I-O-T, griots, and they passed down the oral history from one generation to the next. And you are right. They are verbal. Unfortunately, in a lot of cases, with the destruction and the disintegration of the African continent by the European powers, especially after World War II, a lot of that was disrupted. And as a result, just like the destruction of the great libraries in Egypt and in Kemet, a lot of that history, written history was lost, much less the oral history was lost, when unfortunately, a lot of our ancestors were scattered from place to place, and or they were killed on the Middle Passage and or on plantations when they got to America, for those that were brought here.
Right, and Tom, so what is lost, so we can't go back and fix that. But what we can do is what we have control over today and now, make sure that we record our history properly and that we pass the history on from one generation to the next, however we have to do that. So I think it starts with the home, and parents, once again, stop leaving it to schools, stop leaving it to educators, stop leaving it to other people to educate your children and pass your history on. So if you don't know, then study. If you can't find what you're looking for there, find people who are a little more advanced, a little more knowledgeable than you, and have a conversation with them. but make sure you do your part to help retain the knowledge and the history and to pass it on to your children so your children won't have the same deficit that you have.
I would agree. And, for what it's worth, with the problems that we're having, that we see every day with our children, whether it comes to depression, whether it comes, to suicide, when it comes to, unfortunate waywardness in a lot of our younger generations, a lot of that, Jimmy, comes to a lack of understanding and a lack of family and cultural identity. I mean, regardless of what education what education system you're in, whether you're in an urban school or whether you are in a suburban school or whether you're in a private school, you're going to have some adjustment. There are going to be some challenges and struggles. But the further you get away from your cultural identity, the stronger your identity has to be in order for you to survive.
Right.
Because if you have a very low self-identity, you will struggle with low self-esteem.
The other thing, Tom, we've all have people around us that we've encountered that have made really asinine, stupid statements like, I don't want to work for the white man. Here's a man who is racing horses, subjecting yourself to that level of indignity to make money to take care of your family. And we have people today who have these lofty ideas, have no money to get anything off the ground, but yet they feel they're too good to go work for someone to raise the money they need to do what they want to do in life because they may have to go work for a white person. And so once again, we can learn from those who came before us. There's a lesson to be learned here. You do what you have to do to survive until you're in position to do what you want to do in life. There's no shame or embarrassment for a person who is honestly doing what they have to do to survive. To get to where they want to be. Now, if you have to do some things that you're not necessarily proud of, and I understand that, and I can actually respect you as a person, as a man or as a woman, for simply saying, hey, this is not my dream job. I don't want to do this forever. I'm a little embarrassed to even talk about what I do, but this is what I have to do for now to get through school. This is what I have to do now to raise my family or to save money for a down payment on the house to make a better life for myself and my family. Whatever you have to do in life, as long as you have some goals that you're chasing, whatever you have to do as long as it's legal, do it. No excuses.
I agree. There's an old saying, Jimmy, they said that, sometimes you have to do what you have to do until you're in a position until you can do what you want to do.
That is correct.
And then Robin Harris once said it best, you say you don't want to
work for the white man, but you want to beg for the black man. Yes. May he rest in peace. Funny as he was, died way too soon.
Yes, he did.
Maybe we'll do a segment on comedians, man, and we certainly have to talk about Robin Harris and the genius of his comedy, and not just him, and some other black comedians out there also who have really, really pushed the envelope on comedy and made it much better.
You got Richard Pryor, you got Red Fox, you got a lot of folks, a lot of old school comedians.
A lot of that is true. To go with the Chris Rocks of the day and the Dave Chappelles and the Kevin Smiths. So anyway, Tom, we are coming up on time. So let's encourage everyone to subscribe, to like, and to share. Not necessarily know that order, but if you get all three done for us, that would be great. And I appreciate everyone who is, I think we have 2 viewers now who are watching us live. If you come back next week, I promise that we will shift things around so we can add comments and allow you to participate in the next viewing. So, Tom, I'm going to leave it to you to have the last word and close the show out.
All right, we want to thank everybody for joining us today during our conversation about Jesse Owens. We hope you enjoyed it. We hope you learned something about it. More importantly, go back and do the research for yourself. Learn about this great American hero, this great brother, someone who spoke for all of us. on one of the greatest stages in the world
Yes.
during a period of time in history that was difficult for all of us, our grandparents and our great-grandparents. So we ask you to come back next week, join us, engage in the conversation, and we look forward to seeing you very soon. Thanks again.
All right.